Young Saints, Monday Musings. This past Saturday, there was a young teenager who died on October 12th, 2006, and he died of leukemia, and he was just beatified in Assisi this past Saturday. So we're just going to talk about his life, his name is Carlo Acutis, which I'm probably saying his name wrong, and Carlo was born in London, and his family moved to Italian parents, and they moved to Milan when he was only 3 months old. And he was very devout from a young age. After he received his first Holy Communion, he made it a priority that he would pray the Rosary every day, go to Mass whenever possible each day, and go to confession each week. And so, we see in his life, obviously, the path to sanctity is the same for everyone. Basically, we pray, go to Mass, receive confession, go to confession, and we participate in prayer as much as possible. He was like a kid, any Italian kid his own age. He liked to play PlayStation, apparently, and Pokemon. His mom said those were his favorite video games. He also was aware that these things, as he said, could exercise some tyranny over the soul. And so what he did was he actually made sure that he would only play video games because he liked them so much. He would only play for 1 hour each week, just because he wanted to make sure that while these material things are certainly, they can be good, they can also be used in a way that's not good for us. And so he moderated his ability with something that he liked. He also liked to eat, as any young boy would do, and so what he did with that was he noticed he started to overindulge in food, and so he started to basically impose on himself temperance so he could eat and enjoy food, and so that he would do that in their proper way. He said, "What does it matter if you can win 1,000 battles if you cannot win against your corrupt passion?" And he said his life goal, as he said, was to be always united with Jesus. This is my life program. He had an aptitude for computer programming, which he taught himself. Obviously, he's was very tech savvy, and so he taught himself how to program websites, and he used that gift that he was given in order to spread the gospel message. And he created these websites, these virtual tours, where you could tour all the Eucharistic miracles that had taken place and also Marian apparitions. And so he used these abilities that he had, which was he was very tech savvy, and he used those abilities to spread the gospel. So he certainly is a very appropriate saint for our age. And he said with all these things, while he liked to play Pokemon and, PlayStation, he said the Eucharist was obviously more important than any of those. He said, when we face the sun, we get tan, but when we stand before Jesus in the Eucharist, we become saints. He did contract leukemia at 15, and he did eventually die from that. And he said he was offering his sufferings for the Lord, the Pope, and the Church. He was actually buried in Assisi because he had a devotion to St. Francis, and that's where he asked to be buried. And when he was beatified this past Sunday, his parents actually processed in, and they carried a relic of his heart, which was placed on the altar. And kind of unique about him is so often, parents, I'm sure you're aware, sometimes you have to drag your kids to Mass. It seemed to work in the opposite way with Carlo. He actually, his parents didn't go to church that much, and he was so devoted to the Eucharist that he was often the one dragging his parents to church, and he would always ask them to go on pilgrimages to the places of the saints. And so he really caused the conversion of his family and also many relatives in his family. He's probably the first saint. His body is being venerated. It's in Assisi, and you can actually view the remains of his body, and he's most likely the first saint to be venerated wearing Nike shoes, blue jeans, and a sweatshirt, so he would look just like any other Italian boy of his age. And so when he was getting close to death, or after he had died, his mom had a dream, and Carlo said to him, "I will be beatified soon, and shortly after will be canonized." This is what I meant to do before. When he was getting close to death, his mom also had a dream of St. Francis and said, "Your son Carlo will die soon, but he will be considered very high in the church." So, kind of unique thing. I'll just give some other quotes about him. Again, saint who died at 15, sanctity comes in all ages. He said, "The Virgin Mary is the only woman in my life. Do not be afraid because of the incarnation of Jesus. Death becomes life, and there is no need to escape. In eternal life, something extraordinary awaits us. All people are born as original, but many die as photocopies." So kind of a very unique saint for our time, and so you can just Google his name, you can get all kinds of stuff on him. So I'm just going to talk about some other saints who died young. I'm just going to go quickly through these so the video doesn't go long. Saints Jacinta and Francisco, they were 9 and 10 when they died, and they received the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima. If you want to learn any more about them, I did a brief video on the new Fatima movie that came out, and I talked about Jacinta and Francisco. St. Marie Goretti, she was only 11 when she passed. She was born to Italian peasant parents, and her 18-year-old neighbor tried to assault her. His name was Alessandro Serenelli, and as he was trying to assault her, sexually make advances on her, she said to him repeatedly, "No, Alessandra, it's a sin." And he became so angered by her that he stabbed her with a dagger, and she went to the hospital, and she eventually forgave him. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. He was unrepentant, and then he had a dream again where Maria Goretti was gathering flowers and presented them to him. He eventually, when she was canonized in 1950, he was actually at the canonization ceremony. St. Dominic Savio, he was 14. He was born in Italy, and he would always make sure that he said grace before meals, and he refused to eat with anyone who would not say grace before meals. And he would often go to church with his mother, and he was seen praying before the tabernacle, and he would even be outside the church building if it wasn't open, and he would pray outside the church building. Went to daily mass and went to confession. Again, the saints all have that same path. He received Holy Communion at the age of 7, which was very rare at that time. Wasn't the custom at that time, and the priest was so impressed with his piety that he allowed him to receive Holy Communion early. He wanted to be a priest, and so he became he studied under St. John Bosco. So often we see the saints, lives intersect with one another, so kind of unique. And he made his bed and his clothing as uncomfortable as possible, which he made as an act of penance. He was eventually led to bed rest because of an illness, and which eventually would take his life. And before he died, he said, "Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye. Oh, what wonderful things I see." There was also St. Aloysius Gonzaga. He died at 23. He was born into a noble family. He even served as a page to King Philip II in Spain. And his father wanted him to be a military leader, but he wanted to enter the Jesuits. And so they were going back and forth. His father wanted him to follow a normal life. And so after 4 years of struggle, he was eventually able to enter the Society of Jesus. And so he kind of was unique. He also had as a spiritual director St. Robert Bellarmine. Again, we do see how these saints interact with one another. There was a plague that happened in 1591 in Rome, and so the Jesuits established a hospital there to care for those who were sick, and St. Aloysius made sure that he cared for those who were sick, and that eventually led him to contracting the disease which took his life. St. Kateri Tekakwitha, she died at the age of 24. She was called the Lily of the Mohawks. She was born in what is now modern-day New York. When she was 4, her brother and her parents died of smallpox, and she survived, but she was left partially blind from that. She was raised by some relatives who treated her very severely, and the Jesuits eventually, and we see a lot of these saints being influenced by the Jesuits went to her village, and she was assigned to care for one of the priests, and she was too shy to ask for instruction, but the priest noticed her piety, and so he spoke to her of Jesus, and eventually she took instruction in the Catholic faith and was baptized. She refused to do any manual labor on Sunday, and because of that, her relatives accused her of being lazy, even though she was doing it for spiritual purposes, and they treated her very severely because of that. She had to eventually escape to Montreal because of, what was happening amongst her family, and so she lived in a settlement there, and she made vows of perpetual virginity and died in Holy Week. Blessed Pierre Giorgio Frassati, he died at the age of 24, was born in Italy. His father was the founder of the influential Italian political newspaper called La Stampa, and he received permission to receive daily communion, which was rare at that time. He joined the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, so for those of you who are Vincentians here at St. Catherine's, and he made sure he cared for the sick and also the orphans. He was very active in politics. He joined the Catholic Standard Foundation and the Catholic Action Movement, made sure he went to nocturnal adoration, meditated on the writings of St. Catherine of Siena, and also St. Paul's Hymn on Charity in 113. and he would even sacrifice his summer vacations. He said, if everyone leaves Turin, which is where he was living, who will take care of the poor? Mountain climbing was his favorite sport, and he did many other things. He was very not shy about his political views. I'm going too long. I won't be able to post on Instagram. Just some Monday musings on young